Before we start, everybody, quick update. I decided to partially rename the Webkinz Show as a series, so now it's also known as Grant Scarboro's The Webkinz Show. I did this to prevent this series from being confused with other online Webkinz videos titled The Webkinz Show that were mostly uploaded over a decade ago. However, I'll still use the original title of the series for this video, and most likely for others where I don't need to specify which Webkinz show it is. Hello everybody, Grant Scarboro here with the start of a brand new annual series I like to call Behind the Scenes Rewind, where with each installment, we'll look at the highlights from the production of each episode of the Webkinz Show released in the previous year. As the title of this video points out, we'll be starting with the episodes released in 2020. Since now y'all know the drill, let's begin. Now, for context, this was the first episode of the Webkinz Show I made since starting college in late August 2019. Just before that, I had decided it would be best to put the series on hiatus while getting used to the college life during my first freshman semester. In order to not go off topic here, all I'm going to say about said semester is that it went a lot better than I initially expected, especially towards the end. Anyway, now that winter break had arrived, I was more than ready to not just get back to making new episodes, but to also expand the universe! The first step of this being to add new, unique main characters to the mix. For those who are wondering, Rex, Charge, and Sniffer are all around their early to mid-20s in human years, whereas Nick and Larry are, as shown in a later episode from this year, middle school age. This is so I can more easily create school-centered stories without a rhino beating up a bunch of students.
Have fun inside the VCR! Help! 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 Shut up!
Some of you might be wondering where I got the idea of an army of snowmen from. Well, the idea... As I was saying, the idea came from a fraction of my family's Christmas decorations consisting of, well, snowmen. Nutcrackers, plush, ornaments, you name it. Granted, I wasn't getting any snow in my area, so I literally wrote it into the plot. That was fucking awful, I'm so sorry. Oh, I also added Nick and Larry into the main cast to add some variety. I do not want to fall down the same rabbit hole a certain someone else has. Finally, Freezy will be returning, however, I won't say when. Aside that, it'll be for a big event. For those who are wondering why this episode was so short, that's because it was mainly a test for what I could do in terms of filming in my college dorm. I really wasn't sure of what to do in terms of plot until I remembered the events of Vilgax.
Come on, George! Destroy them! Huh?
Draw something that'll cause massive problems for you and your friends.
So even though this episode was just a test, that wasn't going to stop me from doing some world building. As for what happens with the frame rate tanking here and there, I honestly don't know. What I can explain in further detail, though, is the bit with Ghost Freak.
I should be able to sense him.
Remember the Ben 10 episode, Ghost Freaked Out? Yep, Zscare is in fact going to come to the Webkinz Show as a major villain. When? I'm going to keep that a secret for now. Also, the whole thing about Ghost Freak fighting with such brutality actually began with his first appearance on the Webkinz Show in Shrek Returns.
Now you see me. Now you don't.
Alright, where are you? Oof! Ah! Ugh!
Do you want to see something really scary?
And this bit where Diamond Head's, well, head lights up, that's supposed to be an Easter egg. Now on to Polar Plug. Wait! For those who are unaware, the next episode was going to be another one filmed in my college dorm, but let's talk about it. Has anyone ever heard of table tennis and professional wrestling being mixed together? No? Well, that's what I was intending to do with this episode. I was even able to get a good deal of filming done before something happened that we'll discuss shortly. Anyway, the episode was going to be of Rex and his pals having to find a way to pay their bills that month And what better way to do so than by winning a tournament
of Tuesday Tennis Extreme!
Rex was going to compete as Accelerate until the end, when the TF2 Pyro tries burning everything down after losing, with Rex stopping him as Cannonbolt. Additionally, there was going to be this post-outro scene, hinting at a fight between a certain Inkling girl and the Pyro. As for the inspiration behind this one, it's a combination of 3 things. The Ben 10 original series episode, Ready to Rumble, Emp Lemon's Never Ever episode on Monday Night Raw, and ironically enough, an SML video. Which SML video was it? That would be Cody Plays Tennis, aka a Fellerfest, since Logan always wants those mid-roll ads, with product placement for Mario Tennis Aces. And you'll never believe why there's barely any real-life tennis in it. I think WH Dude's review of it says it best.
I'm aware that in the vlog, they quit the tournament so quickly because it was just too noisy at the tennis courts. This could have been pretty easily fixed anyways. Just play ping pong instead. I mean, it's called table tennis. I mean, not only is that the perfect size thing for plush characters, but if necessary, you could just have Brooklyn guys say that ping pong is like tennis, and maybe even make a joke about how the tennis courts were too noisy or something. I mean, come on, Logan. I know you can afford a ping pong table. But no, instead we got this.
I also want to thank Dub for the inspiration as well, thanks to said review. Filming for this one was actually going great! Even had a friend from Towson help out with filming certain shots. Then came March 12th, where all students had to basically evacuate from campus for some time due to COVID-19. Originally, this episode was just going to be delayed, since we were originally going to head back to campus some 2 weeks later. However, the transition to online classes from home was extended to the end of the semester. Having lost access to the ping pong table, I was left with no choice but to cancel the episode. There wasn't an episode in April either due to the whole mess with online classes as well. Now with that out of the way, on to Polar Plunger for real this time! Up until now, Rex, Sniffer, Charge, and Draw had taken up most of the spotlight. This time, it was different, with the plot being the origin story of a superhero! Aside from this one, that is! Okay, I'll stop that shit for real this time. Speaking of the plots though, it's actually meant to be a form of commentary on the education system, in that it pressures students to get perfect grades as opposed to, you know, actually learning the material! It's a problem I struggled with in school, and I'm almost certain it's something at least one of you viewers can relate with. I will admit that the villain of this episode wasn't really the strongest. My intentions was to make him over the top in that he'll beat kids at Scarboro on schoolwork, which is pretty morbid now that I think of it. Oh yeah, the Batman the Animated Series episode Lockup was too an inspiration here. Still, I can't help but feel as if I made this snake's perfectionism just a bit too on the nose. And yes, as the post-outro scene shows, he will be coming back. Oh, and the said ending was inspired by Two-Face Part 1.
Give me a mirror.
Harvey, maybe you should wait until...
I said give me a mirror. Now!
Fun fact, this was the first episode of the Webkinz show to be fully scripted. I say fully scripted as there was one scene from Quizzy's Trivia Battle Royale that was also scripted. For the next question, wow, this one is quite challenging. I don't think any of the contestants really know the answer to this one for sure. Are you sure about this? Okay then. Which of the following counties was won by Democratic presidential candidate George McGovern in 1972? A. Custer County, Idaho. B. Montgomery County, Maryland. C. Androscoggin County, Maine. Or D. San Bernardino County, California. But I digress. After watching the Superman the Animated Series episode, The Late Mr. Kent, I really wanted to do a detective story for an episode of this series, but I thought to myself, what would be the mystery? It took a while to decide, but I chose the plotline of a shark being framed for one reason. That's being to break down the stereotype of sharks being these mindless, awesome bro monsters you see in media such as 1975's Jaws. So yeah, Trey the Explainer's video essay on how that film royally fucked over sharks was another inspiration for this episode. This was also the last episode I made to 720p 30 FPS, even though the camcorder I currently use is capable of up to 1080p 60 FPS, so why did I intentionally downgrade the footage quality? Well, firstly, I wanted to save storage space on my laptop's internal hard drive. Second, it wasn't until after uploading this video when I realized how 720p doesn't actually translate to high definition on YouTube. It was after this that I decided that, at minimum, each episode would be 1080p, 60 FPS. Additionally, with one exception, I chose to have each episode after this one scripted. Oh, and this, along with a few other projects of mine, taught me that gaming headset microphones aren't exactly the greatest.
Rusty bailed me out when I was slacking off the night before the project's due date. Not only was helping him the right thing to do, but I owed him big time for saving my ass all those years ago. He was a nice kid back in grade school. That, and I knew him rather decently, so him attempting to rob someone just didn't seem in character for him.
Let's just say that for 2020, I wanted to be a bit more experimental than before, with an example of that being the use of new locations. One problem though, I'm not going to get sick with COVID-19 for the sake of a plush video. The solution? Garry's Mod! Well, sort of, but I'll get to that later. For those wondering why I used chroma key shots of the major plush characters instead of Garry's Mod ragdolls, it was meant to show how this was taking place in the real Webkinz world, and not in a video game. I know it sounds confusing, especially since I still used ragdolls for some of the more minor characters, but this episode was meant to be more of a test for what I could do with integrating Gmod into my plush videos. Speaking of which, this has so far been the only episode since before The Invisible Criminal that I didn't write a script for. Again, this episode was meant to be more of a test. Now for the beach scene. Remember what I said about not having access to locations away from home due to the pandemic? That, ironically, didn't stop my family from spending a week in Hatteras, North Carolina. So I thought to myself, I might as well use this opportunity while I can. That's where the beach scene came from, along with part of a scene from the next episode I made. Oh, and the Discord notifications? I didn't realize they had snuck into the clips until it was too late. Oops. At least sprinkling little references and such into the backgrounds was fun. Another aspect of me being more experimental this year, in terms of expanding the universe, was through the addition of more main characters with their own stories largely separate from Rex and the gang. Remember, this is the Webkinz show, not Rex 10. Anyway, this came in the form of the previously mentioned Polar Plunger and Spike Plate with his own two-parter. In terms of how I used Garry's Mod for this episode, let's just say I took an alternate approach compared to last time, as I used it for just some side characters here while in School on the Run. It was the majority of what you saw on screen. Speaking of characters, I didn't have an Archeroraptor toy to use for this scene, so I just modified my Velociraptor toy and boom! There you go! I'll also explain this more when we get to part 2, but I made this two-parter to have an environmental message that isn't preachy as fuck. Oh, and filming in the hot, humid weather of August was utter hell, but worth it! Alright, let me get the elephant in the room out of the way first. The reason the climax ended up as being part slideshow is that I couldn't get the Wildman and Briefcase models to sync up properly in their movement. Why? Because all the Ben 10 models aren't actually for Garry's Mod, but for Source Filmmaker. They didn't have a version specifically for Garry's Mod, so they came out as effects, and I had to use the Advanced Bone tool to pose them and all that. Seriously, Valve, please give us a tool that'll let us automatically rig SFM models into being Garry's Mod models rather than just effects! Oh, what am I kidding? Asking them for that is like asking them for the heavy update! Aside from that, though, this episode was plenty of fun to make, even if there were some glaring technical difficulties. Oh, and this was the first episode where one of the main characters wasn't voiced by me. I decided that Clementine talking through subtitles and inkling sounds would have gotten old after a ton of episodes, and let's just say I'm not the greatest of feminine sounding voices myself. So yeah, big thanks to Roni XVA for giving her a voice, and I'm happy to say that Clementine will now be a part of the main cast of characters, at least for now. This episode wasn't actually planned to come out this year, but rather in January of 2021. Why? Well, I needed my old treehouse for a second part, and since I was going to be living on my college campus again, you can see how I wouldn't be able to access such a place during that time. Not even a week after the semester began, though, all on-campus students had to leave due to a rapid increase in positive COVID-19 tests. Looks like some people just don't understand the point of a lockdown! For those who are wondering, yes, students on campus were supposed to be practicing social distancing, washing their hands often, wearing masks, and so on. Anyway, living at, well, home again, I didn't have the same location problem anymore, but I already had the script for Team Fortress Webkinz done, so I chose to work on that first, then do the second part of Survivor of Hell Creek. Going back to the treehouse bit, I actually decided to make some renovations to it about a third of the way through filming, which is why the episode took a lot longer to get done than I had expected. Speaking of which, the setting of the fight scene between Spike Plate and Pyro was entirely made up of old junk I found by my parents' shed. Old wood, unused slate tiles, and so on. Unlike the last part, I didn't use much Gmod aside from these two shots that were meant to show the world from Pyro's point of view, aka Pyrovision. Finally, remember I wanted this two-parter to have an environmental message? Yeah, I had the meteorite strike act as an analogy to the climate crisis. Also, roll the clip!
All I wish to do now is to protect the less fortunate and this natural world from the immense harm of the few.
The less fortunate are meant to be the poor and those hit hardest by the climate crisis and similar crises, while the few... I'm pretty sure you all know who I'm referring to by that term. Oh, and I originally thought I didn't need to worry about copyright claims when it came to using this music. Boy, was I wrong. And that's about it. Oh, and I apologize for this video being about 2 months late, but I was busy with making 2 more episodes in January. I also started my second sophomore semester at college, so that too. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye, everybody!